Welcome back. Just to get to a few of your tweets that we received. When is normal life going to be restored? When are we going to live with COVID and open up? One person says, explain the 8 p.m. closing time as we know it. The €9 meal. If you can think back to the €9 meal, that was when the pubs that served food could open, but the so-called wet pubs couldn't. And certainly that's something Gaz was questioning. Why 8? Why not 9? Why not 10? And that will continue on, I'd say, for the rest of this month at least. They really need to make this change for close contacts. It's impossible to run business properly. Likely to be approved by Cabinet tomorrow, but we don't quite know when the rule change will come in. Now to move on to something else. For many of us, the new year comes with promises and pressures to lose weight. But is it time we leave behind this focus on the number of the scales and steer away from this diet culture? Well, joining me is Barry Murphy, Research and Policy Officer for Bodywise, Dr. Eva Orsmond of Orsmond Clinics, and via Skype tonight by psychotherapist and columnist with the Irish Examiner, Richard Hogan. You're all very welcome along to the programme. Barry, I want to come to you first. This idea of new year, new you, that people will really look at their lifestyle because they do, whether we like it or not, at this time of year. Do you think it's problematic?
Certainly for people experiencing eating disorders, yes, because I think if we look back at the Christmas period, it's a very sedentary period. There's substantial kind of food availability. There's a very relaxed atmosphere, but then for people with eating disorders, once January comes knocking, then the messages shift. The context completely changes. So in an eating disorder, a person is over-exercising, restricting or binging or purging or using laxatives or those kind of things. So when January comes about, those kind of messages are amplified because the societal discourse is all the stuff around the gym routines, changing how you look, how you feel. So in recovery from an eating disorder, it's kind of like putting on a life jacket in a sense. And when a person hears messages that are in a sense kind of disordered eating from the wider culture around them, that does chip away at that sense of recovery.
So how do you think then that this can be done, I suppose, in a responsible way? Because people are essentially, in many cases, maybe feeling, as you say, a very indulgent Christmas, but then this flip side, that 180 in communications. But many people do feel it. I need to do something. I need to get into this new year. I need to be healthier. I need to look at what I eat. How can that be done in a positive way that isn't triggering and isn't difficult for people who are overcoming eating disorders and other people who may be very anxious about the messages they're receiving?
Yeah, it's really hard, and there's no kind of, I suppose, silver bullet with that.
Okay. It is a difficult one, isn't it, Eva Orsmond? You run clinics, you're looking at people every day who are presenting with chronic problems with obesity. What would you say when you hear Barry saying that this messaging that we're hearing is triggering, it's problematic for people, new year, new you, that it isn't really a fix-all for people?
Yeah, no, it's obviously sad, and I understand that these people have an issue, but it's a very small percentage of the population, 1% to 4% of the population that has eating disorders, where we're talking about Ireland, where majority of the people are overweight or obese. So it's more common to be overweight or obese than normal weight. And we have sort of a bit also forgotten how a normal person and a normal child looks like. And I think it's really important that we sort of bring, you know, the message back home that yes, it's good that in January and after big festivities, we pull a little bit back and we start looking what we are eating, because an average person puts around 5 pounds of weight on a yearly basis. And you think about, this is why the overweight and obesity levels are going up. And we are not talking about the body shape, we are not talking about body shaming, not physical appearance. This is really about the health, and there's enough statistics around the consequences. I see this in my clinics every day. I see type 2 diabetics who are on a number of medication. Type 2 diabetes disease alone takes over 10% of the health budget in Ireland. So you think about how many years we have been talking about the hospitals are, you know, really problematic, like there's a big issue with money, and we are spending money on a lifestyle disease. So like it's really important that we get communities together with different TV programs where we're trying to make the communities to exercise, look at the diet, as a families together as a team.
You mentioned there about, you know, the pounds, the weight loss and, you know, stepping on the scales. Do you think that idea, because I know there's been criticism around that idea and just generally that maybe a move away from that would be good?
You see, I'm coming from a different culture, first of all. I'm coming from Finland, where children are weighed from the moment they are born, and that weighing and measuring never stops because it's part of the public health initiative, and it's very important.
What's the impact of that?
There is no impact. It's very good impact because people are made health conscious. People are made weight conscious, that is actually one of the body, you know, the health measures. The same way if you went to your GP and your GP says, oh, I'm going to measure your blood pressure, you're not going to be saying, oh, no, that is making me anxious because maybe you discover that I have a high blood pressure. So if I discover you are excess weight, that will impact your blood pressure. I have a gentleman in my clinic who asked, after 35 years, at the age of 69, by losing 2.5 stone, was able to stop his blood pressure medication. That's 69-year-old man losing 2.5 stone and stopping his blood pressure medication. You imagine the impact that this will have on a national level if people lost even everybody just 1 stone of weight, how much that would affect their health.
OK, I want to bring Richard Hogan in here because we're talking about that, I suppose, this idea around New Year, New You, resolutions, lifestyle changes, all happening in January, a difficult month for many people. And we've heard Eva discuss there about the fact that, look, this is, you know, simple. It's a health check. It's looking at your weight and seeing, you know, what you can do about it. But what, I'm wondering about the impact of that and whether you think it's a good thing.
Well, Claire, thanks. Great to be on the show. I would probably strongly disagree with what Eva said there. I suppose working clinically and working with adolescents in particular, the research is there that anorexia has the highest mortality rate of any mental health disorder. In fact, the mortality rate is 12 times higher than any cause of death for females between 15 and 24. I think that alone is a staggering statistic and should wake us all up as clinicians, as policymakers, as advertisers, as people in the media. Of course, attaining a healthy body, desirable body weight, and that is, you know, that's a healthy thing. But it's how we do it with our children. It's how we talk about body weight. It's body image, and it's about, you know, removing shaming of people and about the idea that Eva said about forcing children to be weighed all the time. I think we need to get, you know, I think we're in the age of extreme individualism. I think the selfie is the biggest, you know, most remarkable thing there. We're always looking at ourselves and we're so interested in body. I mean, I think we need to shift away from that, and we do that as parents. We bring that culture in. I think we're in a society at the moment that's very much designed around Instagram and superficiality, and I think we need to change that because children are suffering, Claire, and that's the reality of it, because they're coming up in this environment that's just all about body and image and self, and we need to help them to move out of that.
Yeah. Barry, are people who are using your services saying that they are hugely influenced by what they're seeing on social media around body image? Is there a direct correlation between that and developing an eating disorder?
There's a very dark side to social media, obviously, and look, we live in a very visual, device-orientated world. 350 million photos are added to Facebook every single day. That's about 4,000 photos a second. So we've become a very comparison-based society. It's hard to say definitively what the link is. The research is kind of contested. Some show kind of a link, others say it's kind of more up for question. So it's a very complex one in relation to social media. I know tomorrow there's going to be news in relation to online safety, and that includes potentially eating disorder and things like self-harm. So that's a really positive piece. And in Bodywise, we've worked with Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, TikTok around issues around online safety.
And we'll ask Dr. Eva about it again, but that issue around, you know, weight gain and checking your weight and all of that from a health perspective, is that ever a positive thing in the area in which you're working? What I'm wondering is, you know, when we talk about that losing the pounds and gaining, you know, losing the weight here and there, but the positive side to that being you can live longer, you're less likely to have cardiovascular illness and all that sort of thing. Is there ever, you know, a positive steer on that, you know, within your organisation, or can you see that at all?
Well, part of people recovering from an eating disorder is the deterioration piece stops. So some of that is, say, for an anorexia nervosa, that they will potentially regain normal weight. So, you know, it's not about bashing kind of weight interventions. That's not where we're speaking from. It's just that there are aspects of anti-obesity messaging in public discourse that are not unproblematic for people with eating disorders.
Okay.
I'm just wondering here, how are we going to bring the message and talking about healthy eating and how important this is, where we actually, anorexia is such a small percentage. Also, as a disease, it's a totally different pathophysiology altogether and origin totally different. So what I'm saying is that would we not rather think that these people who suffer from the eating disorders would actually just not watch television, these programs, and things can trigger, and clearly somebody with the eating disorders, there are other things as well that will trigger them. So I think it's important also that we are realistic here and look at the numbers, where the biggest problem in the society is, and concentrate on that. Even just talking about the COVID now here, we need to remember that, for example, overweight and obesity is a serious risk factor for serious COVID cases. And if we look at the cases of young people who are in ICU units with COVID, they are usually overweight and obese. A big majority of them are. We are not talking about that. We are not talking about the fact that vitamin D deficiency is one of the serious, also problematic for COVID. So we really should bring the health message and the benefits of our healthy eating.
Do you agree, though, with all of that, that while the health message has to get out there because of social media, and I guess the way messaging is everywhere now, it's very hard to just switch it off. It's really difficult to just avoid it. Yes, of course it is,
and that's why we basically need also, I would say that HSE should also step back and actually look at their guidelines, because very many guidelines at the moment, still our food pyramid, dietitians working in hospital, it's absolutely disgraceful the type they treat type 2 diabetics, and the people are giving unspecific advice, go home, lose some weight, but they're not told how to lose it. They're not giving the tools, they're not giving the support, and this is what people need. I have seen huge benefits without any medication, people changing their lifestyle, losing weight from type 2 diabetes to blood pressure to cardiovascular disease. They get also huge benefits psychologically. We're talking people from depression, mental health. Like we saw the shift over the COVID lockdown when people who started to exercise and actually engage with healthy eating, how they actually managed.
But we also saw during the lockdown, you know, a huge rise in eating disorders and plenty of challenges. Like we saw a lot of extremes during this lockdown that everyone would feel.
But of course, it's how to get this balance. This is obviously what it is.
I want to ask Richard, we just got a tweet in there. We need to have real conversations about societal attitudes to weight and the body shaming that comes from that. Do you think that's true, that that kind of conversation hasn't been had?
I absolutely do think it's true, and I think it's a very important conversation. I think this is a very important conversation to have this evening, because there's a lot of children and there's a lot of parents watching this tonight with children in the house that they're very concerned about, and they're watching their eating habits, and they see that they're hiding their food, or they're wearing baggy clothes, or they're excessively exercising, and they're watching their weight decrease. And so I think it's a very important conversation. Like 100 years ago, this was not affecting our children, and it's here today. And we have to look. We are society, Claire. All of us. We make up society. We make the culture. We decide on that culture and that social discourse and what's going to go on in our society is going to filter down into our children. And enough is enough, I think, here. I think we have to really look at this. If you sat with me, Claire, in my clinic every day, you would see the devastation that this is having on, and particularly young girls. And we have to really stand up. I've got 3 daughters myself, and it's something I feel very passionately about. We have to stand up here and say, this is enough. Enough is enough. Yes, I think what Dr. Eva said there is important. Balance. It's really about celebrating food. It's not about restricting and severe dieting and weighing yourself all the time. It's about celebrating food. It's about enjoying the food that you're eating. It's about enjoying healthy food and looking at that, and not about restricting and getting rid of and weighing yourself and having this superficial idea about a perfect body and a perfect image and a perfect face and all this really terrible stuff that has impacted our children for far too long. I think it's time that we really, this could be a starting point where we look at this and say, this is enough. Look, we got to change the discourse here.
Well, it certainly is a starting point, because I think it's brought out a whole range of questions and challenges with how we deal with this when we look at the obesity problem in this country versus the messaging around all of that and how we get the balance right.
And definitely it's not about looking superficially about somebody's body shape, but really when we're talking about children, likewise, there are over 25% of children in Ireland who are overweight or obese and who suffer seriously from the depression.
Okay.
Like that, if you were sitting in my clinic every day and you saw the overweight and obese people, when they lose the weight, how they gain their life back, their health, their confidence, and when somebody is in control of their diet, their control of their life.
It's certainly not a black and white issue. And if you have been affected by any of the issues that we have raised in this discussion here tonight, you can view the relevant helplines on virginmedia.ie/helplines. We will leave it there. My thanks to Barry Murphy, who's joined us, Dr. Eva Orsmond, and Richard Hogan, who's joined us tonight via Skype. Now, coming up after the break, we'll focus on Boris Johnson's Downing Street party. What will it have on our own politicians feeling the pressure? Stay with us.